let's say that there was human space colonists came here and then somehow the ship crashed. You'd lose all your technology. Within 100 years, it's gone. And then within 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years, it's gone. And so people wonder how they moved these stones to the pyramids. Well, 4,000 years ago, maybe they had a little bit left. Who knows? I don't know. But a lot of people like to say alien, extraterrestrial. But what if it wasn't? What if it's not even that? What if it's the pole shifts? This is one that's getting a lot of attention recently.
It is. Yeah.
Because Tucker Carlson did this show. And then, of course, you have Ben Davidson, and we've done a couple interviews with him. This idea, they call it the Adam and Eve story. Are you guys familiar with it?
A little bit.
Every 6,500 years, a pole shift happens on the Earth, which flips the planet, creating catastrophic flooding and destroys whatever lives on the surface, most of it. And so you end up with small pockets of humans around the planet trying to recover this great cataclysm every 6,500 years. And so what if what's actually happened is most of the technology is wiped out and destroyed in a great cataclysm, except small remnants are eventually discovered, and then governments start finding it and researching on it, and they're like, what could this be?
Man, that'd be just in time for the next shift, and it happened again. It's just a repeated cycle.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Well, I hate
that idea.
because these theorists think it's happening right now. We had the power outage in France, Spain, and Portugal, which I talked to Ben Davidson, and he said it's the weakening of the magnetosphere, which allows solar activity, normal solar activity, to permeate down to the surface of the Earth, which then can disrupt our communications.
Right. Which is what the Aurora Borealis is, right? It's a visualization of
solar activity
interacting with our magnetic...
Right, and it's where it's the weakest, to the North and the South Poles. That's why you can see it. Do you guys remember when the Aurora came to West Virginia?
It went to Tennessee.
Yeah, and this was what, last year or something?
Yeah.
So Google this right now. Like, you can Google magnetosphere weakening, and there's stories this year, last year, and the year before about the magnetosphere is weakening in key areas. Mainstream news and science and government says, no, it's normal and it's fine. Adam and Eve theorists are like, the cataclysm is coming, and that's why they're building these deep underground military bases. And this, now where I'm connecting, here's the segue. It's, what if it's not aliens and alien technology we've discovered? It's our own technology from the last wiped out civilization. And what if we're about to get wiped out again?
Yeah, I don't buy the pole shift theory, but I do think the magnetosphere is messed up. And that's allegedly, when I wrote the story about all the birds falling out of the sky, a lot of these migratory birds, they're cryptochromes that they use to migrate with, uses the magnetosphere. And a lot of them, they say, are falling out of the sky.
I've heard
thousands
birds
at a
aren't
time.
real.
Well, thank you for saying that, actually, because that is also true. Some birds are real, some birds are fake. But the ones that are real, allegedly, are falling out of the sky because the magnetosphere is messed up.
They're saying, there are researchers who believe, I shouldn't say this, they're saying, but there are researchers who believe they found Noah's Ark. It's this mound in Turkey where biblically it lines up. And recently, researchers came out and said after doing ground penetrating radar, they found what does not align with a typical, geomorphic structure or whatever. It appears to be remnants of something potentially man-made. But being, of course, maybe 6,000 years old, most organic matter has been decayed, wiped out, and what they're looking at is structures that are indicative of some kind of intelligent intervention in whatever that structure is. And so what if the Great Flood was simply the pole shift, the planet tilts, the water maintains momentum and washes over everything, and a big boat made it?
I do find it funny that the pole shift theorists, or the Adam and Eve ones in particular, say it's every 6,500 years, which happens to be just about the age of the Earth that young Earth creationists believe Earth is. So, you can take that however you want, because
I
go either way.
Speaking of the Noah's Ark story, what's interesting about that whole thing is it's in the lower mountains of Ararat in Turkey, just across the border of Iran. And they found, from what I remember, up to 26 drogue stones leading up to this site. And the drogue stones, in ancient times, they would hang off the side of ships to balance them in heavy waters that are shaking. And so as you're bringing it in for a landing, it would make sense you're cutting these drogue stones. And these drogue stones, I think there's one, they're still uncovering them out of the ground. There's one that's above ground. I don't know if they excavated or not, but it's taller than the man standing next to it. I think they estimated it to be about 2,200 pounds with these giant holes where they put the ropes through.
Whoa.
And if you just, I don't even know where to tell you to look it up. I know.
Well, I just did.
Okay.
So this is the Durupinner site, which is what they believe may be Noah's Ark. And this is Wikipedia. This is like very biased to the left. It's like they're not going to be very fond of biblical narrative. But they say that in the nearby village of Kazan, They examined so-called drogue anchor stones they believed were once attached to the ark.
Yeah, it's and there's a lot of different things in that area that people will say, oh, well, this was the altar that Noah built afterwards, and you can do all speculation that with the drogue stones though, it's really hard to get around. Why are there 26 drogue stones in the lower mountains of Ararat leading up to a site that resembles Noah's Ark?
And I want to stress this too for our secular friends. This doesn't. And I'll say this in general, it doesn't mean it is or is not religious. It's saying, hey, this looks like there may be a large human-made watercraft of some sort from thousands of years ago for some reason. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe the
Some
story
evidence that the story in the biblical narrative is true.
Well, imagine a cataclysm happened. And then after that cataclysm, is anybody in this room capable of building a computer? No. I mean, I can buy the parts from Fry's and stick them together. But if you came to me and said, how do you make a processor? I'd be like, okay, well, I know it's like, silica or something?
Right.
Cut into wafers, maybe? Sorry, we don't have the capabilities. I certainly don't. Some people might. I don't know how these screens work. I know what a light-emitting diode is. Wouldn't be able to make one. So what do? You have kids. You're trying to rebuild civilization. And one day you're sitting there and you're talking to your kids who've never experienced any of this. And you're like, we used to have, we call them screens, monitors. We could monitor. And they'd be like, whoa, the monitors. And then they'd tell stories of powerful beings who are the monitors who could see everything. And they would interpret it in a way because they can't conceptualize what they've not seen. So then what if we said, we need to write all this down. Write down as much as we can about how life used to be so that this knowledge can be shared. And then you end up with thousands of years later, people being like, that never happened. That's ridiculous. These rules don't matter. Nonsense.
Yep. Then the world
It'll be
is
funny.
destroyed.
Yeah.
It'll be funny if we figure out this really efficient way of producing clothes that doesn't mix fabrics. We're like, so that's why it was in there. Shellfish is
Leviticus
always
had a point.
Shellfish aging is caused in general by shellfish. Didn't Moses live to be like 600 or something?
It was
I remember
up there.
how old he was.
Yeah.
I know.
Adam lived to be like 7 or
900.
And we're gonna find out it's because
900.
we eat pork.
I think he's like 120 or something.
Moses?
It's like pretty.
I think he was older
He
than
had
that.
40 years. 40 years.
Oh yeah, you're
before-
right. You're right. It was 40 years, 40 years, 40 years. So it was 40 years as
an Egyptian.
under Pharaoh, 40 years outside of Egypt, and 40 years of the Exodus. You're right.
So it's 120.
Ages went down after Noah, I think.
Yeah, but Methuselah was 969 years old, and
Because he didn't eat shellfish.
exactly. He had sustained it.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think certainly there is an interesting idea in the ancient aliens theory that it is humans,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
with this pole shift stuff.
Yeah, Alberino is really good at this topic because he goes around the world and studies these megalithic sites.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is obviously they're there. You look at Machu Picchu. How in the world did a primitive civilization build Machu Picchu? Right? I don't know that we could do that today.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the amount of work and the scale of some of the projects and the size of these stones and how perfectly cut they are is remarkable.
Speaking of, so we have pyramids that are not discovered yet. Some are discovered, but they're on private property, and the landowner says, no, you can't excavate or anything. And
Some
Mexico.
We also have we have the inverted pyramids underground. They go the other way. They go down, and then in the Amazon, they believe there's probably tons of pyramids, but it's all overgrowth and nobody goes there and excavates. But anyway, sorry,
No,
continue.
you're fine. I think Chiapas, Mexico. Is that a place? I can't remember, but it is in Mexico. A pastor friend of mine, he was down there, and he was on the private property of one of these locations, and the guy who owns it grew up on the property. And when he was a child, they went over to this pyramid, and this guy's story, take it for what it is, he said, at one point, if I remember correctly, these two lights came out of the sky and descended onto the pyramid. And these beings went from light to some kind of light being. And they told them essentially, if you ever come back here, we're going to kill you. And ever since then, him and his family never went back. But he owns this property that has this pyramid on it, but he won't let anybody go near it.
You know, the first thing that comes to mind is a helicopter dropping some like special forces guys with lights on their heads, so they're blinded, and they yell out in whatever native language, "Don't come back or die," because they're doing military operations.
It's like the thing in Peru.
I was just going to say that just recently, that whole thing that happened, that was one of the theories is that...
What happened in Peru?
Was it Peru or Brazil?
I thought Peru, but I could be wrong. It was
I think Tim actually went down there. Alberino went down there, I think. So I think it was probably Peru. And I don't know the full story like he does, but essentially there's this thing that came down. These beings came out, just like in Vegas that happened last year, I think it was. And one of the theories was that these were actually like special forces that had this technology and was scaring the crap out of these locals. I don't know what for.
They thought like a UFO showed up or something? Or?
Yeah. They said this like thing showed up and these beings walked out.
Is this? I'm thinking of the one about the miners, MINERS.
Oh.
And that's where people thought they were being invaded by extraterrestrials.
Real quick, you're saying this is recently?
So I get because it was happening. The timeline was happening where it was really close together. I might be confusing the Vegas story more than the
because there's
Peru
this
one.
In 1996 in Brazil, a UFO crash landed.
No, the one I'm talking about is
You're talking about
sooner.
Peru.
Yeah, the one that happened.
Which happened
I
close
They were
to
like on
Vegas.
jetpacks.
Yeah, that they call them the face peelers. Is that the same
Yes.
group? Right.
Yes.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.